Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Brewhouse Art Studio. I am Brian Brewer, and today we are going to be talking more motion builder, motion editing, and tutorials. Specifically, we are going to be setting up a prop for a weapon or an object of some sort that you want your character to interact with, um, how to make it, how to edit it, and and what have you. So let's get started. All right, got a new layout here. Hopefully it works out okay, and I'm not too much in the way here. All right, so you got your character. You want to put a prop in his hand. It doesn't matter if it's a gun or a box or a cigarette. Uh, you want to capture whatever that object is for whatever reason you want to capture it. Probably because you want that data to come through and you want to be able to work with it. So this is really simple. I think we're gonna go through this pretty quick, and then we're gonna get over to some motion editing after this bit. Uh, so here we go. All right. So the first thing I got is I have this old character. He's set up um, in a way that I used to kind of do things. I kind of set things up different now. So I'm going to disassemble him and I'm going to reassemble him into a way that is more conducive to using this technique. So I'm going to head down here to my constraints, and he has his gun constrained to his weapon mount in his hand. So let me hop over here to where are we at? Right weapon. So you can see this gun is constrained to that weapon joint. So if I move his arm, the gun goes with it. But what we want we want it to move independently from each other. So what am I going to do? All right. So I am going to turn off that constraint. So now the gun should move freely. So if I come up here and I grab the gun, it's now moving freely from the hand. If I move that, it's no longer moving the gun around. Then I'm going to create a couple of markers. And I got some dogs who are very vocal in the background. Go sit down. There you go. You two hush back there. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my asset browser, and I'm going to grab a couple of markers. I'm going to pull those into my scene. And these are going to basically be what makes up my rig. So I'm going to get my weapon. I'm going to get it zeroed out. So let's zero this out to world or local, as the case may be. And translation. All right, so it's kind of putting at his feet. I've got my snap set to 45 degrees, so if I hold down J and start to rotate the weapon, it will snap right into place. There we go. So I got the weapon all set up and ready to go. I'm going to take my marker, which you can't see because I have things hidden, and I am going to increase this, and I'm going to create a little box to go around this weapon. I'm just going to scale it. And this is going to become my control rig for whenever I'm ready to start working with the animation part of it. All right, so I got my box. I'll then hit 3 on the, come on, select just the marker. There we go. There, I'm going to hit 4. Oh, okay, it's 4 on the keyboard. They've changed the hotkeys on me in Motionbuilder 2019. All right, so I'm going to hit 4, and it's going to switch it over to wireframe. I'm going to add a couple more boxes. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to color these boxes a different color. These are going to be for his hand attachments. So I'm going to go over to marker settings, under properties, and I'm just going to pick a nice blue color because that's the color I like. And I'm going to watch Motionbuilder rearrange everything for me. Remember, hold down Control whenever you need to move a window around. It's going to try to dock it for you. All right, so I'm going to take these and I'm going to constrain it to that marker, or parent it to that marker. I'm going to call this one right hand attach. All right, I'm going to call the other one left hand attach. Rename. Oh no, you got an ad playing. Oh hey, thanks for the follow. See if I get your name right. Jerome? Oh, it disappeared too fast. I'm sorry. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna have to turn off that fun little wavy thing. I can't look over and see who's following me. But all right. But hey, thanks for following me. I appreciate it. All right, so I've got where am I got? Okay, so I've got my left hand and right hand attached. So right hand, I just kind of move it out, kind of where I think the right hand's going to be roughly, just right about there. I'm going to grab the left hand. I'm going to do the same thing, pull it out up over here. Now I want to make a quick mental note. I scaled this box to be roughly the shape of my weapon. Typically, you don't want to scale a marker up using the scale functionality. What you really want to do is you want to come down here to these boxes or these markers and select them. And you want to go to size and scale them up down here in your properties window. I just kind of scale them up a little bit so you can see them a little bit better. Now I'm going to hit 4 on the keyboard to turn them into bounding boxes. So the basics of the rig is now complete. And so the next thing I'm going to do Hey, Pepedge, did I get your name right? Thanks for the follow. I hope you guys are like my little icons I created over the weekend. I was like, how do I make a fun little GIF to pop up, and how do I do this? Something I had to learn. Oh man, I'm popular tonight. Look at that. You guys are awesome. All right, so where was I at? All right, so I got this. I got my boxes. So this red box is going to be my control rig. These blue boxes are going to be controls for my hands at some point. Now what I need to do? I need to go through and I need to constrain my weapon to that red box. So I'm going to come in here to my constraints. You can do it in a couple different places. You can come over to your asset browser. You can go to your constraints and you can add a constraint. See, I like it. I like it when it looks like this. You can come over to your constraints, and you can add a parent-child constraint from here by just dragging and dropping it into your scene. You can also come over to constraints, and you can right-click on constraints, and you can insert the same exact constraint over here. It really is, multiple ways to do the same thing inside Motionbuilder, right? So I'm going to call this, I need to call these things something very easy and logical to recognize whenever I have to go back in here. So I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this weapon to rig. There we go. Call that weapon to rig. I'm going to rename this weapon rig. I like to name my rigs after whatever prop I'm getting ready to hold. So it'd be like a box. I'd say box rig, or if I had a little data pad, I call it data pad rig. It's just easy to, when you have a bunch of things in a scene that you need to, start controlling. So I got my weapon rig. I need to constrain my weapon to that rig. So let me head back over to my... There we go. Let's head over here to my blah, blah, that. This is the top node. I actually have a bunch of different weapons that you can't see right now. So I'm going to constrain the top node of all those weapons to that box itself. So I'm going to do it by, you select it, you hold down X. I use my hotkeys, and I'm going to drag it over into the constrained property over here in the constraint settings. I'm going to go to my weapon rig. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to do the same thing. Hold down X, drag it down here to source parent. I'm going to click. Okay, now here's how constraints work. And this is very kind of an important thing because you can like mess things up and have to like fix them. If I hit snap, what's going to happen is it's going to snap or it's going to turn the constraint on with the offset. I know snap. Why do they call it snap? Why don't they just call it like offset or something? But they call it snap. So if I hit 0, what's going to happen is it's going to take my weapon. It's going to try to rotate it and translate it to match my source object as close to 1 as possible. And I don't want that. I want the offset in this case because the weapon is its root is here in the handle, which you can't hardly see because his feet are in the way. Maybe I should just move his feet. I'm just gonna move his feet up so we can see what's going on here. There we go. His feet are up. All right. So right here is the origin point of the weapon. There's a reason why I like it here in the center for the weapon. I'll explain that a little bit later. And if I forget, remind me. Say, well, why is it in the middle? And I'll try to remember and get back to it. But the weapon joint itself, its root is right here in the handle because typically that's where you put them when you're making a game weapon or prop of some sort. You put the root joint usually where you're holding on to it. All right. So, but I want that offset, so I'm going to click snap, and then I'm going to click lock. And lock is going to prevent me from being able to move this weapon around. So I got it selected. I can no longer move, or I cannot rotate that weapon. It won't move. All right, so that's done. So the next thing I need to do is I need to create another constraint. The next constraint, it will be to his there's going to be 2, and you're going to be toggling them on and off. There's going to be a weapon constraint to him, and then him constrained to the weapon. So I'm going to create 2 more constraints. This time I'm going to do it over here. I'm going to say insert constraint, parent child. Now I can right click and say insert constraint again, or what I can do is I can say right click on parent child and I can say duplicate, and now I've duplicated that constraint. So I'm going to grab that weapon rig, and I need to get that lined up with his hand. Now how can I do this easily? Let me think about it. It's been a while since I've had to since I worked with this character. I'm going to call this and rename this. Again, I try to come up with names for my constraints that make sense and that are logical. So I'm going to call this weapon. I'm going to call this rig to hand. Rig to hand. All right, so I got my rig to hand. And I'm going to call the other one, rename, hand to rig. Rename. There we go. So now I got rig to hand and hand to rig. And these are constraints that you're going to be toggling back and forth as you animate or start applying motion capture onto this character. So rig to hand. So the way I'm going to do this, and I'm pausing because I'm trying to think through this problem in my head. This is live, folks. No smoke and mirrors here. I'm going to, and the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to actually constrain the, I know how I'm going to do it. All right, I figured it out. I'm going to unhide this joint so I can actually see it. So this joint right here is part of his skeleton, and that's what I want to animate whenever it goes into game, right? That needs to control the weapon. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to line it up with the weapon node, translation rotation, and then I am going to constrain the rig, which is, oh look, I accidentally named it rig to hand. let me unselect everything. If you have multiple things selected in Motionbuilder, by the way, and you go to rename it, it will rename everything the same name. Oh, rename. Weapon rig. There we go. Back to weapon rig. All right, so I'm going to take my weapon rig and I am going to put this is my, this is hand to rig. So the rig is in control. So I'm going to put that there. And I'm going to take my weapon node and I'm going to put this under child. And this one I'm going to, this one I am actually going to go 0. So I'm going to 0 and lock. And that's going to make sure that my, actually I need to redo that. Let me unlock that. All I'm going to do is unlock it and then relock it. So I'm going to realign it with this in rotation. Rotation. There we go. Now I'm going to lock it. I probably didn't see what was going on under the hood. I just want to make sure that my weapon joint is following the direction of the weapon itself. In video games, you have to make sure that whatever direction your weapon is facing, or your weapon joint is facing, your weapon is facing also, because it's the way they ray trace and figure out what you're shooting, right? And what direction your gun's pointing in. They know that whatever vector you're in, that game engine uses needs to be pointing in that direction. So, and in this case, if I go to local, I can see it's pointing down the Y. All right, a weapon rig is pointing down the Z. So there you go. So I got hand to rig. So if I move my rig around, I can see my hand is moving with it. And I need to realign that translation there. There we go. I relock that. All right, so now it's locked right where I want it to be. All right, so now my weapon joint is in control. Now I'm going to turn off activate, and I'm going to go to my other constraint, and I'm going to reverse it. So it is going to be weapon rig. It's going to be the child, and weapon bone will be the parent. And I'm going to snap and lock. That way any offsets get baked in there. All right, let's put his feet back down. Put him back there. There we go. He's back into place because I hit the back in place button. All right, so now if I move his arm around, you can see it's moving his gun around. If I come here and I toggle this back, and by the way, if you guys out there, guys and gals who are like really good at like scripting and writing commands in Python, you could probably create a really nice user interface that's a quick click click kind of a thing. I need to find somebody who's really good at that, so I'll share my stream with them and they can teach us some Python stuff. So anyway, so his hand's in control of the weapon now. And if I toggle that off and toggle the hand back on, his hand is now able to move free of the weapon, and the weapon moves around, which is actually moving his weapon joint around. All right, so that part is done. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create some auxiliary effectors on his hand. So it's real simple. You select your character, you right click, and you say create auxiliary effector. And it creates this little box, this IK box out here. I'm going to do it to both of his hands. Create auxiliary effector. You can see it's actually it's under the main control reference. So I'm just going to grab both of those. Again, if you want to, if you're out like this, you're like, I'm trying to select my things, but I'm having a hard time. All you have to do is select them, hit any unbound key. I use the Q key to do this, and you can move this into place. I like to take my auxiliary effectors, put them down here, and then I usually hit unparent because I don't like having these lines drawn all over the place. So now I've got my auxiliary effectors down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two more constraints. Insert, constraints, parent child, and then I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to call one right hand attach. Right hand attach, and I'm going to call the other one left hand attach. I think you see where we're going here. I'm going to take those auxiliary effectors now, and I like to organize my schematic view just because it makes it easy for me. So I like to put the right hand under the right attach and the left hand under the left attach. Just what I like to do. So right hand, I'm going to, this will be the child. This blue box that we created in the rig will be the parent because it's going to control that. And then I'm going to 0 snap. And you can see it's actually pulled his hand and trying to, it snapped that box to that blue marker, and it's trying, his hand's now trying to reach it. But what I'll do is I'm just going to turn that off so that his hand does what it's supposed to be doing. Now I'm going to go do the other one, left hand. So again, this will be the child. The auxiliary effector is. The attach node will be the parent. This is the control node for the hand. I'm going to 0, which pops it over there. You can see it's trying to pull his arm over. I'm just going to put that into place. All right, so now I have kind of everything set up. This is the basis for just about everything you want to do. Once we pull motion capture in here, there's one more constraint, which is going to be the rig to the mocap. But one of the things that we definitely want to also set up is we also want to set up some character extensions. So if I go over to my character extensions, which is right here, what I want to do is I want to create a couple of them. You can come over to your asset browser, you can go over to characters, and you can drag a character extension in to your scene, and that will create a character extension right here. I'm going to call this weapon rig. Weapon rig. There we go. Or what you can also do is right click on character extensions and say insert character extensions. Again, multiple places to do the same function, right? And I'm going to duplicate that. Wait, can you duplicate it? Delete, 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 rename, insert, create. I guess character extensions function a little bit different. So I'm just going to insert another character extension and rename. I'm going to call this left hand or right hand. Right hand attach. Oh, cancel. No, I do not want a namespace on that. Oh, by the way, if you guys are asking questions, I have to admit I'm really bad at looking at the chat while I'm working because I'm really trying to think through some of these problems in my head. But I promise you, if you guys stick around to the end, I will answer questions and everything. So, all right. So right hand attach. Okay. So the way you do these character extensions is it's real simple. You grab the one that you want to add to it. And I'm going to drag my weapon rig into weapon rig, add to weapon rig. I'm going to grab my right hand and drag it into right hand, add, and same for the left hand. Drag that over into left hand. All right. So now we need to add them to our character because they're not part of their character just yet. We need to say, hey, these extensions that we just created are now part of your control rig. So I'm just going to select all three of these and drag these up into our character. I'm going to get this warning that says, hey, any of your poses that you've created, well, they don't have these new character extensions in them. So guess what? You're going to have to recreate those poses. So that's something to be aware of. A lot of times when you go into a scene, you have this nice character built out with poses that have been created and everything. And then what happens is you start animating and realize, oh, I need to build all these new constraints and stuff and character extensions and things to make my scene happen. And thus, you'll probably have to update your poses. So anyways, that's what that is. So I'm going to get like 3 of these little dings right there. But now the character extensions are part of his character. Now, let me explain why I created 3 character extensions. I could have added both the rig and both the hand attach to the rig, but what I want to do is when I create a pose, I want to be able to adjust all 3 of these elements individually. If they were all part of one character extension, when you paste a pose onto the character or onto the rig, it would put them all to wherever you created that pose. But I don't know if that makes sense. But if they're all part of the same character extension, you can't individually paste poses onto the different nodes. But making them different character extensions, you can. And so if you got a rifle, oh, you can't see my hands. There you go. So if you have a rifle or something or a box or whatever, and this is your rifle, and then this is your sniper rifle, that's your sniper rifle, and all I want to do is change where my hand is here. Having them separate character extensions, I'll be able to quickly paste whatever that pose is. A lot of the poses have already been predetermined by art director or whoever who says this is a pose that we like, and so you usually take those poses and you pull them into your scene, right? So all right, so that's done. So I got my character extensions, I've got my rig. Let me show you kind of like the principle behind why I kind of liked having this in the middle. I'm going to snap back to or switch back my constraints from hand to rig to hand. Maybe you guys can come up with better naming conventions than what I just came up with. Let's I don't think I have any poses on this guy. No, I don't have any poses, darn it. So let's move him into place. We're just gonna put a cheap, hack of a pose onto this guy. He's just gonna stand here idle or what have you. So when you're posing a character, so here's a little side note when you're posing, it's a good idea to like turn on your translation and rotation as you're posing this guy because it's going to keep his hands right where you want them. And I usually try to do it in full body mode when I'm creating a brand new pose. So let's say this guy's here, like so. And let's get that weapon back into his hand. Like that. All right, so let's pull his hand up like this. And then we'll take his other hand and we'll just move that hand down and around. We won't worry about finger grips for this part of the demo. We're just going to say this is where his hands are at on the weapon. So there we go. So let's pretend this is our awesome pose, even though we all know it's not. All right. So I'm going to fine tune this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and set a key. So it's going to set a key on everything, including the rig that we just made. I'm then going to take my pink boxes. Actually, I shouldn't be doing that one. I should be doing these. These are too big. Let me scale that down. So these are the auxiliary effectors. I'm going to go over to my properties. I'm just going to scale those down to a more manageable size. I like to make sure that my control boxes that I'm using to control the effectors are bigger than the effector. So I'm going to line that up with his hand. I'm going to take the other one. I'm going to line this up with his hand. All right, so that's that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I rotate this gun. Oh, wait. If I rotate this gun, so again, now I've switched the constraints over, so now the gun rotates independently, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my IK effectors. I'm going to turn that up on translation rotation, and I'm going to grab that weapon rig. And I'm going to rotate that around. Now you can see it's rotating his arms. Because the pivot point is in the middle, what you're doing is you're kind of getting a middle way of rotating both those arms together. It's kind of like an easy, nice way to kind of quickly get poses. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that right there. I'm going to take this gun, this hand. Now I can fine tune it a little bit more. And let's kind of angle that and make it feel nice. Let's drop that elbow. That elbow's a little high. But yeah, now's a chance to kind of fine tune your pose. Constantly hit set key. I do that. Set key. That way I don't lose whatever the pose is. This elbow's a little tucked in, so I'm just going to flare that out a little bit, make it a little bit nicer. All right, so now I've got a character with the weapon in control of his hands. This will make more sense later as soon as you start putting motion capture onto this guy. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and save this just in case I need to come back to it. And then we're going to start talking a little bit about what you do on the mocap set. So if I come over here, let me open up this image. Where is it? Here it is. So here's one of our prop weapons that we've used. It's just in order to marker a weapon up, you have to have, or in order for a properly markered prop to work, you have to have 3 points on it. In this case, you can see it up the top, off to the side, and underneath. It's best that these markers are not in a straight line, if possible, and that they're offset from each other. Otherwise, the software will probably get a little bit confused. Let me close that down. Let me pull this over. Here's another one of our prop weapons. This is very important. Whenever you shoot motion capture, you want to make sure that you have reference of whatever your prop is. I think I talked about that in my last tutorial about when you're retargeting motion capture to a character, you want to kind of keep that character inside those markers. So you need reference images of the actor in the suit so you know kind of where to put the elbows and everything. Same thing with the prop. When I come in here and I line up my video game gun, my CG gun or whatever, to the marker data, I'm going to try to fit as best I can even a crazy space gun like this within those markers. And that's what they look like when you turn the flash on. They like glow into the screen. And so go the other way, bump, bump, and here I am with that same rifle. You can see here's one of our actors on stage. He's glowing. I'm holding the gun up right here. And because I have the rig set up, the rig is actually controlling the weapon that you can see up on the screen right there. And anything can be a prop. as you can see from our amazing actress, Miss Elizabeth Maxwell, right here, this is her and her heavy machine gun, which is basically a chainsaw with a big piece of PVC pipe on the end and a couple of little pieces of PVC pipe coming off for a handle. And there she is hamming it up. So yes, always take reference pictures of things. Uh, oh, and this is funny. During our shoot, a car hit a transformer down the road and knocked out all the power. So we were without power for like half a day, one of our shoots. So again, she's hamming it up. All right. So enough of that. That will come into play again in a little bit. All right, so I saved that. I'm going to go open up my next file now. So last time I showed you guys solving from a skeleton. Well, back in the olden days, we had something called C3D, which are a bunch of little optical nodes that drive your character. And I actually have these little optical nodes around this guy. You can see him here. And then you create an actor, which you can kind of see this this blue guy right here. So the optical nodes drive that blue actor inside of Motionbuilder, and then our character retargets to the actor. And back in those days, that's what was called solving, because you're taking all this marker data and you're solving it to a skeleton via this actor. So, anywho, let me close this. All right, so if I play this animation, this is a range of motion that we shot eons ago, and by we I mean a company I used to work for. And he's just going to go through that range of motion, which we talked about in the last tutorial. But I also would like you to note that there is a weapon rig that I've created on this gun already. And this weapon rig, don't ask me why I designed it this way. It was like a long time ago. But you can see the red C3D markers, right? I can't select them for some reason. It's because they're inside because they're markers inside of other markers. It's not letting me. So if I go find, there's my C3D data, and here they are. So over here somewhere. Those it? Yeah, that's it. So I've got these markers that were on the weapon at the mocap shoot, and I did my best to try to line that this rifle up with those markers. Now the range of motion doesn't have any weapon data in it, but this animation does. And let me unhide, or let me hide this actor body so you can kind of see what's going on there. So what we got right here is an animation of all these cool cheers that we did, or taunts. And what's driving this weapon is actually the motion capture. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to bake this down, and then I'll be ready to start motion editing this in particular motion. Also, I talked about last time about processing data, and when you process the data, you basically set up this master solve like this, and you start pumping data through. So let me do a motion file import. Let me go grab, I think I like this one. Merge, yep, that looks good. Import that. Don't need that. Continue. All right, so here's a motion of him jumping over something. so there you go. As an animator, I would get this and I would start thinking about it. I would start thinking about my plan of attack. How am I going to get in here? And how am I going to start animating this? So let me tell you a little bit about concept of the weapon rig. I kind of showed you how to build it. I kind of showed you its functionality. I wonder if I have something around here to kind of like show, give you an idea. Let me transition over to this right here. Hold on, I got an airsoft gun. Hold on. Okay, so this is an airsoft gun. Not real, it's an airsoft gun. And there's usually a difference between the actor's arm and the arm of the character in game, right? So the arm of the character in game um, is sometimes shorter, it's sometimes longer. So what happens is even though the actors may be holding the weapon like this, when you get it onto the game character may be like this or kind of like this, and he's not really holding the weapon, right? Uh, and we want to try to get as close to the data as possible. If I took that weapon and I made it follow his arm, that gun's going to be completely off. It's going to be someplace else. It's going to be pointing someplace else. It's not going to be pointing or acting the way that how the actor controlled it in the shoot. So by creating a rig, which is a box, and by creating um, those constraints for the prop, you can actually lock. You can take this hand that's off and lock it right onto where the actor's hand actually was controlling that weapon. So now the prop is actually driving the actor's weapon, or prop, or whatever the actor happens to be holding. It could be a box, it could be anything really, right? So now it's driving uh, the character's arms is what's happening, and yeah, yeah. So that's that. That's kind of the concept behind it. Is it tries to make it as accurate as possible. And when I interviewed at ID, they were trying to figure out how to solve that problem for Rage, for all the characters, all the you know whoever the bad guys in the game, good guys in the game, the Authority, what have you, and and then so they figured out how to solve the problem. And then when I interviewed with them, they asked me, well, how would you solve this problem? And I said, I thought about it. And I basically came up with the same solution that they had come up with. And that got me the job at ID to work on Rage for a little bit. So let me swap back to my screen here. I kind of watch that again. So there you go. Like I said, this is an easy, short tutorial. And if you guys have any questions, I would. This is like the great. This is like a good time to get in there and start typing them in there. And uh, yeah, anything I can answer for you all. So I think when this is done, uh, here in a minute or two. What I will be doing is I'll be cutting my stream and I'll be restarting the stream back up to kind of like cut the video. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to actually edit this motion, and you're going to actually see how my thought process as I talk through. It'll be more casual, and I'll probably go on until I feel, I'm at a good stopping point for the night. I just noticed something. You want to see something funny? Oh, I just watch his butt. Watch his butt. Yoink. Did you see that? Wook. I'm going to show you how to fix that here in a sec. Does the weapon you get set the act? Let's see. Does the weapon you get set to the actor go for all characters you do, or need to? Uh, so it depends. Typically, all weapons have a metric. Like this is the grip, this is the stock, this is where you hold it. All male skeletons are the same. There might be some difference if you have like a bigger character or a skinnier character. Here, let me go back and forth for you guys. A bigger character or like a skinnier character, there might be like an offset. You have to you have to do in game. If you have a character with a completely different skeleton, in case of like the game I'm currently working on, which is but IK, which is Star System, we have a male and a female skeleton. They're different sizes, so the way she holds a rifle is going to be slightly different than the way he holds a rifle, or if she's sitting in the cockpit of a ship or whatever, it's going to be slightly different, right? So we have to think about that. By the way, are my mic levels too high for you all? I'm trying to put a filter on to boost my mic, and uh, sounds good. All right, cool. Um, so yeah, so sometimes that's a thing you have to, but generally because all game characters share the same skeleton, usually not so much of a problem. Let's see. Do you ever run into problems using mocap balls with actors of different body types? How do you fix that? Are you talking about the markers that you actually fit on the characters, like what you saw, the glowing bits, if that's what I'm getting at? Uh, there is a specific layout of how you marker an actor, and I'll go ahead and I'll pull in one of my images that I just shown. Let me go to my tutorials, reference, find a picture. Here's a good picture of one of our actors, Scott. It doesn't matter if he's a big heavy set dude or super skinny dude or a male or a female. It really makes no difference. There are specific points that we have to put those markers onto the character in order to get uh, the system to be able to recognize that this is a shoulder and this is an arm, this is an elbow, and so on and so forth. For a prop, it really takes 3 markers, at least 3. Like you can see one here on the stock, on the top, the front of the barrel, and one on the magazine. We do place those markers strategically. We want to, because the actors have markers on their hands, we want to keep the markers that we put on the prop away from the hands, because if it gets too close, the software will flip the markers. You get like swapped markers, and then somebody will have to go in and like fix those swap markers. And I know who you are. You know that you fix swap markers. um, but yeah, so we want to minimize the work on the back end. So we try to do as much on the front end as possible in order to have a successful shoot. Hopefully, I hope I answered that question for you. Let's see. But IK is the breast placement of the markers the same for male and female? It's exactly the same. Yes, and it depends on the layout, right? So Vicon has a slightly different layout than OptiTrack, which has different setup than other packages out there, other systems out there. The system that you see right here, like in this image, doesn't matter if you're male or female. You got one right up here at the top of the sternum, and then one right down here at the bottom of the sternum. Yeah, I think it is. You can totally have, let's say you have a shotgun and you got to like pump it, and you maybe, or maybe it's like a slide or something. You can marker all those bits and pieces, get them articulated, put when that C3D data comes in. Like if I come back over here, when that C3D data comes in, it'll act just like how the marker data is acting on this rifle. Again, I can't select it because it's a marker inside of a marker. I can select this one. There we go. Uh, so yes, what's going to happen is those markers are going to move independently, and I will show you kind of how we handle that. So right now, these markers are set up as a rigid body, right? So it's like it's one unit moving through. But if I had, let's say, a slidey bit on that gun that I needed to articulate, I would take those markers that are the slidey bit, and those would have its own rigid body, and those would move independently of the first one. And then I'd have two rigs, right? I'd have the main rig, and then I'd have like a little secondary rig that slides back and forth. And that secondary rig that slides back and forth would control the joints that are on the weapon or the prop. So is it possible to mark? So yeah, okay. Is it good? That's good to know. C3D is raw marker data. It's kind of raw marker data, right? So the way motion capture works is you have a camera and it's shooting infrared down at a marker, and then that marker is reflecting its directional, shoots it right back up to the camera, right? And then what happens is, I'm just gonna let this play so you guys have something a little more interesting to watch than me. So there you go. So then it reflects back up, and you need three things in order to triangulate a coordinate. You need two cameras and a marker, and with those, you know where that marker is out in space, and that's just a floating point essentially. So now we have however many markers are on your character or your actor or on your props. It says 52, let's say. So you have 52 markers floating out there. The software is tracking all 52 of those points in space, and they're all labeled, and the software knows where each one of those are at, or at least it tries to the best they can. And then we build a skeleton. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping this answers the question, but yes. So C3D is you export just the marker data, just that point data. It comes in as a marker and called C3D data, and that's what you use. I'm gonna, while you guys think of more questions, I'm gonna show you how to fix the funny little his butt. Let's fix his butt. This is hysterical. Wonk, 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 wonk. All right. This is how you fix something like that. And this is why we don't use C3D as much now as we used to in the past, right? Because you'd have a lot of this that you'd have to fix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into I'm going to go to a good frame, right? I'm going to go to a good frame that I know the markers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm going to go to my optics, and you can see here's the whole list of markers that I'm pointing to my screen, like you can see what I'm pointing at. Here's a whole bunch of C3D, all the different markers that are in the scene. And we actually had two characters in this scene, right? We shot a female character along with the male character, so there's a lot of stuff in here. But what I want his hips. And if I remember the names of his hips, they're pinky, ankle. I think it's this one. Is it? Yeah, it's that. It's these RBWTs. So I'm going to select all the RBWTs like so. So that's all the markers that go around his waist. I am going to I first have to double click on one. There we go. All right, now I'm going to select all of those markers. I'm going to hop over into the its controls. I'm going to go over to rigid body, and I'm going to say add, and it's gonna, you can see it's added this rigid body to it. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hide that. I'm gonna go to that area where he had the weird hips, and you can see he no longer has weird hips. Let me hide all that stuff. So right there, that's where his hips were acting a little funny, right? Boom. But now they're not acting funny anymore. So this is a lot of times sometimes you'll get dirty data coming to your way, and you'll have markers that you'll just see a marker just go off into space and then come back, and it will cause your actor to want to like pull in that direction as it comes out and comes back. But you can solve it by grabbing all the markers within that element and creating a rigid body. See, when the character jumps, like what you're showing now, do you have to do different markers for the character? So when we do different jumps, you have to do different markers. See if I understand what you're saying. Uh, if I'm wanting different jumps, would I give him a different prop? And if that's Dirty Daddy, I see you down there. Yeah, if you're wanting a different feel, then absolutely. The reason why we built, let me go back to my fun pictures here. Where is it? There you go. The reason why we built this heavy machine gun out of literally it's a chainsaw with a pipe stuck on the end of it, and little handle that we created. The reason why we have that is because when an actor is carrying around something heavy, there's you see the performance. You see they're no longer like standing like this. They're leaning back because they're counterbalancing the weight of whatever that is. A lot of times when we're dealing with performance capture, where the character has a head cam on and a little camera out here facing looking at the face, the all the high end ones have these big battery packs that the characters wear on their backs. And I don't know if you ever seen somebody in it with a big heavy backpack on. They don't stand up straight. They actually like lean forward like this. So we'll get a lot of data with actors leaning forward. Some studios have caught on to this, and they've actually counterweighted on the chest of the actor as well. So that will help balance out something big and heavy on the back with something equally heavy on the front. Just like a boom on the front of a head cam, there's a lot of weight out here, which would cause a lot of like shifting of the helmet. So then what they do is they'll counterweight the back of the head cam, and that kind of stabilizes everything. So let's see. Character's now called Dirty Daddy. I like it. And she likes it too. There we go. Close you. So kind of hitting this up again. So I'm trying to think, how would you do this? So when you want to create rigid bodies, like obviously the head can be one rigid body. So you can come in here and you can say add. It'll create one for the head. You could probably create one for the chest. Kind of have to identify all the different chest markers. It looks like he's got 3 on his, maybe 4 on his chest. He's got several on his back. Uh, but anyways, you kind of go through it and you'd find them in groups. You can't have like the forearm rigid body to something on the bicep because you have to be able to like bend your elbow. So you kind of like find clusters of these markers on solid parts of the body, and create the rigid bodies that way. So come on, guys, let's go. All right. All right. So when you're done and you're ready and you're happy with the motion, you're happy with how everything looks, what you would do is you'll plot down to your character. So I'm going to plot down to my skeleton, and then I'm going to plot down to my control rig. Now he's no longer being driven by the motion capture. He is being driven by his control rig. See, yeah, that's right. If you're not having fun with your job, it's not worth doing. All right, so without further ado, I am going to, where is it? Image. All right, I'm gonna cut my stream, and let's see, where is it? I'm gonna cut my stream. I'm gonna be back in just a minute, and the motion that you just saw. I'm gonna start editing. I'll walk you through my process.